When we started BTT Studios in 2024, me and producer man had a vision. The vision was to bring as much pro wrestling content to this page and to our universe as possible, but not just big time wrestlers, not just those that were involved in the ring. We wanted to do fans. We wanted to do those who worked in the business in addition to wrestlers as well. So our guest for this episode of our BTT Conversations encapsulates all of that. Over 35 years of fandom, having a gimmick that has lived on for all of these years and stories literally coming out of his ears. He's known as Neon Chris, and we are thrilled to welcome him for the first time here to BTT Conversations. Chris, it is great to see you again. It's been a minute.
It has been. It's so good to see you, Coach. It's great everything you do. I'm glad your producers reached out to me. It's just so good, seeing you and going over some fun stuff and some fun stories and fun memories and people, places, and things. And I can't wait. I'm really excited.
Well, we are thrilled that you're here too, because this is exactly what we wanted this brand to be. And as we build and do these interviews, for me, it's about going down memory lane and remembering a lot of the good things, but not all good things in the world of wrestling, as you know. But man, I'm super, super excited. So let's jump right in, because there's a lot of people out there that are going to be like, who is this guy? What is he about? Tell me why you decided to start going to wrestling shows, how you did it, and why you're known as Neon Chris.
Well, it all started. I was a wrestling fan in the late 60s. I grew up watching the original Sheik and being terrified by seeing blood when I was a 7 and 8-year-old. My wife, Jan, who is neon yellow, she was a wrestling fan in Minnesota in the early 70s. She watched wrestling with her grandmother, and they watched Vern Gagne's old wrestling and everything. So we got together. We enjoyed wrestling. And it was late 1993 when I wrote a letter to Vince McMahon saying, because we already had bought our tickets to WrestleMania 10 in New York. We already had our playing tickets, but I wrote a letter to Vince saying, hey, it was a pretty emotional letter. Jan and I were together, wanted to hopefully maybe get engaged during WrestleMania weekend.
Wow.
Didn't anything would ever come of it. Didn't think anything about it. So a week later, I get a phone call at work, and it's from Vince's secretary, Beth. And she says, please hold for Vince McMahon. And it's like, oh, okay. And all of a sudden, Vince comes on the line with the left. Oh, Chris, this is Vince. How are you? And he said, I read your letter. I thought it was great. I felt it was very emotional, and we'd be more than willing to do that for you. He said, so I'm going to hook you up with our VP, who is Bob Collins, Wink.
Oh, yeah.
And Jerry Jarrett, who's Jeff's dad. And they said, well, they'll be working with you over the next few months to put this together. So I did. I talked to Bob, and actually, we're lifelong friends with Bob. We talked to Bob not too long ago. And so anyway, Bob and G helped put this together. We were going to do it at WrestleMania. So we were going to do it during the fan access. This was the first year they did fan access. So we had it all set up, but things kept getting moved. It was like, well, we'll do it Saturday afternoon. We'll do it Saturday evening. We'll do it Sunday morning before the show. And we'll do it during the show. Meanwhile, I had the ring on me. Jan had no clue what was going on. So the Shawn Michaels Razor Ramon ladder match is ready to go in the ring. And I realized this is not going to happen. So finally, you just never, it was live TV. So in the cab, but between the Madison Square Garden and Planet Hollywood, I popped the question. Jan said, yes, it was great. So we get back to Columbus a couple of days later. And we were not bitter. I was not angry or disappointed, at all. We were grateful. So I called and left a message with Vince, and I left a message with Bob. I just said, thank you for doing this. You treated us like royalty. We're so thankful. Everything was great. Thank you very much. And I thought that was the end of it. So about an hour later, I get a call from Bob, and Bob says, that was a very nice message that you left. Vince was very flattered that you were not upset or anything else like that. He says, and so I want to tell you, this comes with Vince's blessing. If you ever want to go to a show, ever, and if you're willing to pay for the tickets, we will put you in the front row for any show you ever want to go to. And that's how it started. People have wondered for years, but we were sworn to secrecy. We never told anybody about it for all these years, never told anybody about it. And so
Oh, wait. Let me cut you off right there. I want to make sure that people understand what you were saying. Because of this whole scenario in New York City that didn't happen, you then acted classy, and because of that, you've always bought your tickets, but they always guaranteed that you would be in the front row, and that's how you got those tickets.
Correct. I had one contact in the office. Now that contact changed a couple of times over 30 years, but I had a contact, had my credit card, called them up. They knew exactly what was going on, gave them the credit card number, paid for the tickets, and then, before the show, the tickets would show up. We got comped maybe 3 or 4 times in 30 years, and that was only because a show fell on my birthday or Jan's birthday or our anniversary. Every other time we paid for the tickets. But I was so grateful. We never abused the privilege. We never posed for the cameras or flipped off the wrestlers or yelled something bad. We would even, after matches, I would cover my mouth and we would say, "Thank you for the match. Thank you for the effort. Thank you for the match." We always were supremely grateful for where we were and how we got there.
My God, I wish all fans could be like what you. The reason you covered your mouth is because as fans, you want to root for the good guys and you want to boo the bad guys. So I'm assuming you didn't want the fans around you to know that you were rooting for the bad guys.
I mean, we were part of the business. We had worked at HW in Cincinnati. So when you cover your mouth, I wasn't going to break kayfabe for that. I wasn't, but I wanted everybody to know. And even the referees, I would tell Chad Patton or Jack Doan or Jimmy Corderas or whoever, "Thank you for the effort. Thank you for the match." We always did that. And I think that they were appreciative of it because we found out, pretty quickly that, we were not just seen as marks or fans. We were seen as a little more than that. And we always, again, were supremely grateful for that.
It's so funny that you mentioned that because that was about probably 6 or 7 years before I started. But what you did carried over through my entire first 11 years in the WWE. And you're exactly right, because a lot of times, and this is what a lot of people don't realize, because you and Sign Guy are two guys that I've respected and the way you go about. Because Sign Guy, for people who don't know, he's the guy that wears the backward red hat and then the blue shirt. You also started wearing certain kinds of shirts because even though you didn't yell and scream and all of that, there was still a way for people to know that you were there. When did the wearing the certain kind of clothes and the shirts start?
I'll tell you exactly when it was. It was SummerSlam 1995 in Pittsburgh. We had already bought our tickets, but there was something that was going on. We couldn't sit in the front row. We were in the fourth row in a section that was just off center. You could still see us, but anyway, the reason why you could see us is it was the night before the show. It was Saturday night. We were going to dinner from the hotel in Pittsburgh into downtown. So because it was dark, we were wearing the colors. Jan was actually wearing the pink. I was wearing the yellow. We're leaving the hotel. Bob Collins is coming back to the hotel. I think he was with Ed Cohen or someone like that. So they were coming back, and Bob goes, "Chris, how are you? It's so good to see you. You're going to the show tomorrow." He says, "I forget. Where are you sitting?" I said, "Well, we're sitting not in the front row. We're kind of in the fourth row. We're probably not going to be seen." And Bob says, "Those are the perfect things for you to wear. I think you and Jan should wear those bright colors, and you should sit where you, and I'll bet you anything
Really?
find you." And that is exactly how it did. Because when we saw the show, later we're in the fourth row, but criminy, I mean, you could see us as plain as day. This works. I mean, this works. So it was originally windbreakers because those are the real bright, surf style windbreakers you bought in markets or stuff. But I mean, they were too hot to wear in the summer. They were too cold to wear in the winter. So we ended up getting, hoodies like this or, regular shirts that were those colors just to, to be comfortable. But that is how it started. SummerSlam 1995 in Pittsburgh.
Boy, we have so much in common. That's when I became a heel, was SummerSlam 2003. When it comes to buying the tickets, and I think because so many people have asked me over the years about certain people that come to a lot of shows, and they go, "Oh, clearly the company had to buy those for you." When it comes to Sign Guy, we were in Sacramento one time, and he flew out from Dallas. And I remember bringing him backstage, and Triple H told him, "Listen, you're a huge fan. We want to take care of you at every show." because he would go because his wife had passed away in tribute to her. You go with your wife for all of these years. It's a package deal. It's something that means a lot to me to see people like you or sign guys share in that. He was always adamant that he never wanted to get free tickets. Why was it so important to you to always pay for your ticket?
Because I mean, it was for. I mean, it was a condition that. I mean, I was so surprised when Bob mentioned that to us in '94. It's like, oh wow! I mean, that would be great. But I mean, but I had a very good paying job. I worked for 30 years for the state of Ohio for workers' comp as a fraud investigator and a claims examiner. So between Jan being a nurse and me doing what I did, I mean, we just felt it was right. It was the right thing to do to pay for the tickets. I didn't want to crawl to anybody for comps or feel like that or that we were owed or anything. I mean, we always insisted on paying because we just simply felt it was the right thing to do for the company. It was just the right thing to do. It wasn't any more deep or philosophical. Other than that, it was just the right thing to pay for the tickets so that we would have nothing hanging over our head and enjoying ourselves.
It's funny because the business is built. There's one word that we all use in the business more than any other word, and that's respect. And I think a lot of times people like yourselves or others don't know or understand that those stories circulate backstage. We know, we understand, we hear about it. And so we always respected people like you because you weren't trying to take advantage of a situation. Over the years, and we'll get into some of the guys that you've gotten close with, but over the years, what has been the reaction from people in the business when they see you show up to a show or you have interaction at a WrestleMania Fan Fest or something like that?
It's been wonderful over the years. We were so surprised when people started noticing us at conventions or other things when we didn't have the colors on. We went to a fan fest for the ECW Heatwave 1998 show in Dayton, Ohio. And you had guys like Tommy Dreamer and Chaz and New Jack and Shane Douglas and Heyman and people like that. And so we're walking through, and the first person we see is Taz. And, Taz's gimmick then was, beat me if you can, survive if I let you. I mean, he was just a tough guy. Jan was intimidated. She thought, oh, I hope he's nice and everything. We go up to Taz, and the first thing Taz says, I mean, we're in like T-shirts and shorts or whatever. Taz goes, where are your colors? So we had this conversation. So 5 minutes later, we go over and we see Tommy Dreamer for the first time. Tommy Dreamer was with New Jack, I think. And Tommy goes, where are your colors? And it came to me, where are your colors? Where are your colors? We did a lot of stuff backstage in those days because I did a charity auction for the state of Ohio that benefited Make-A-Wish. And so because of the relationship and the ticket situation and everything, I knew I could talk to people and feel comfortable. I remember Bob Clark. Remember Bob Clark? Bob Clark was head of talent, and Dave Hebner ran the backstage, him and Tim White. And they would let us come backstage and get all these things signed for Make-A-Wish. One time we were getting stuff signed in '01, and Undertaker came walking by. And Undertaker just kind of walks by slowly and everything. And he says, He says, I bet all this stuff's going to get a lot of money on eBay. And I said, no, Mr. And we always call people Mr. Even if we knew him, we called them Mr. So I had my Make-A-Wish literature that had my pictures in it and everything. I said, no. I said, no. I said, look at this. This is for Make-A-Wish. This is a charity thing. And this is only up and up. And he looked at it and he goes, I guess you proved the Undertaker wrong. Doesn't happen very often. And he would, and so we would, people would always say, hey, it's so good to see you. And they get our names and stuff. And we would be asked, well, what did you think of the match? And all this. And it's always so good to see you. Or we'd be at a show that we hadn't seen Lillian Garcia for a while. And during a commercial break, Lillian would lean over and she'd yell, hey guys, haven't seen you for a while. We've missed you. And it was just so wonderful that we felt that the talent, gave us, that respect, and that they knew that we treated them equally with respect. And what's also funny is it happens, all these years later, probably once a week, maybe more, maybe not quite so much. But Jan and I will be somewhere. We'll be in a shopping mall or we'll be in a restaurant, just wearing regular clothes and everything. And like somebody who, waiting tables will say, are you the couple that always sat in the front row wearing the purple colors? And I would go, yes, but you have to give me your name because we always wanted to treat people with respect and everything. And he said, yeah, I remember seeing you guys in the front row and everything. He said, seeing you today makes me relive my childhood. And that would blow us away, and it still blows us away that people remember us. We went to an indie show where somebody said, "Hey, you guys in the front row, I saw you in WrestleMania. I saw you in the front row, and when you were at WrestleMania, it made me feel like that you were representing the indie fans, the small fans, the people that go to shows where there's only 100 people. Thank you for representing us." And that would and still blow us away that people knew and saw us and felt like that about us. It's just overwhelming.
It's the most unique business, really in the world when you're talking about sports or sports entertainment. And what you're describing is one thing that right now today is very frustrating for me as I've kind of gotten back into the business from this side of it. And we obviously a lot of shows, but you're describing families that came up to you. You're describing Fan Fest. You're describing all these different shows. And to me, I've been to 17 WrestleManias. And when I think of one word to describe it, it's family. And it's families walking around and enjoying whatever it is that they're enjoying. And now, because of ticket prices, you can't have that anymore. You don't have that, or you've got to be wealthy or well off just to be able to afford 4 tickets to go to a big event like SummerSlam or WrestleMania. What was an average ticket price for you back then for 2 tickets for you and Jan?
Back in those days, probably like in the mid 2000s or whatever, to sit in the front row for a SmackDown or a Raw, it was about 100 or 100 and a quarter. Now, it's funny you mention that because the last time we sat in the front row at Mania was 2007 in Detroit for Mania 23, our favorite show of all time. I still have the ticket stubs because we paid $750 each for those tickets. So $1,500 for 2 tickets. I know, we looked for years and years, and I think now, because they put all the tickets through, travel packages or Fanatics or all these things. I know now if you want to sit in the front row, like at WrestleMania, like at SoFi or MetLife or Vegas or whatever, since you got to go through the travel package, I think it's at least $15,000 per ticket to sit there. Now you can go on StubHub or whatever and probably find something less that's not attached to the travel package, but you're still talking thousands of dollars. And Jan gets disappointed and frustrated because it's like, oh well, we'll never sit in the front row again. I take a little different tack to it. It's like, hey, if someone's willing to pay $15,000 to sit in the front row, more power to them. We had our time, we did our thing, we never embarrassed anybody, we had fun. If somebody's willing to pay 15 grand to sit in the front row in Vegas for WrestleMania, fine. Just please react, act like you want to be there. Don't sit there like a zombie and don't embarrass the wrestlers and don't make it about yourself. I don't care how much you pay for it. Enjoy the show, try to put over the talent, have fun. Make it worth your while for 15 grand because we sure did for 35 years.
I tell you what, you're way more mature about it than I am because whenever I see that price and WrestleMania and a lot of people are getting smarter, and at least not for front row tickets, but for other tickets, they're waiting till the night before, 2 nights before, and they'll drop down to in the hundreds. But the problem is that when you're doing a WrestleMania and you're flying in, you don't want to risk not being able to get in a ticket that you want to sit in. So you almost have to do it ahead of time. But to me, it's obscene that somebody would charge $15,000. And I don't care that it's a company that I worked with or not, because to me, it turns into the Super Bowl. And what I mean by that is corporations will buy those tickets and they'll give them out to an employee that may not even be a fan. So when you're watching them on camera, you just said it. You're like, be into it. Show your fandom. Scream, yell, boo, do all the things that you want to do, but at least show me you want to be there, because for that kind of money, whether you paid for it or not, to me, that's a once-in-a-lifetime type of situation. Did it bother you when you didn't sit in the front row?
We went to 13 WrestleManias, and well, if you count the ones that we went to 15 WrestleManias, sat in the front row for 12 of them. The only ones we didn't sit in the front row for were 2018 in New Orleans, 2016 in Dallas, 2014 in New Orleans. Every other one we sat in the front row for. But the thing is we were part of the friends and family package in those last three. So we were paying $500 to sit in the risers or even in the lower bowl for those tickets. Again, that's because tickets were getting jacked up. We couldn't do it. I honestly always looked at it, hey, it's like anything else, it's supply and demand. If the price is too high for people, then those seats are going to be empty. Those first 5 or 10 rows of WrestleMania at those enormous prices, those are the first tickets to sell out. And yeah, I know a lot of them go to brokers, but it's like they're the first tickets to sell out. If they're not selling out and no one's sitting there, then maybe the Fed will start dropping prices. But you and I both know that that ain't happening soon. As long as there's corporations out there, and that's the kind of business that Nick Khan loves doing with WWE now. As long as it's business, as long as the checks don't bounce and the money keeps coming in, those tickets are still going to stay 10 or 15 grand. They just are. I look at it this way. Jan and I talk about it all the time. We are so grateful that we were able to do what we did when we did it, because it was a mom and pop, a big mom and pop, but it was a mom and pop organization, back then, because they had just gone public, or it was before they went public. So it wasn't the way it is now, where it's a corporate, conglomerate. We're so thankful that we did what we did when we did it.
Man, Chris, I'm so glad I was there during that time as well, because it was so much fun. We used to so look forward to the WrestleManias every year. We were there for a full week. It was awesome. I want to do something here. We're going to do two things. First, I want to look at some pictures that you sent in. I'm going to put them up on the screen, and then I want you to tell me your very first reaction and kind of the Reader's Digest version of what the story is behind that picture. All right? All right, so here's the first one. This is because you became good friends with the Hart family. Here is Bret Hart. Referees, there's Jack Doan, Timmy White in there, and there you are. Tell me about this picture.
That is Montreal. That is Survivor Series 1997, the Montreal Screwjob. Everybody remembers, that was such a chaotic match and chaotic scene. If you remember, the first 7 minutes of that match were Bret and Shawn brawling outside the ring all over the place. They had gone to the other side of the ring like 3 minutes in, and they went over the guardrail, and the fans were killing them. I mean, the fans were beating the hell out of them. It was the most violent crowd I've ever been a part of, because they wanted Shawn Michaels' blood. They wanted his blood because that was the weekend Bret was leaving. So they stopped brawling and they come over to the other side of the ring. And Jan is tapping her wedding ring on the guardrail saying, come over here, come over here. So what happens is that Bret throws Shawn over the guardrail and they are in our lap. They are brawling in our lap for 30 seconds. One of them almost kicked Jan in the face accidentally. You can see me on the videotape holding my chair between my legs because the fans were trying to steal my ringside chair. And so it was just crazy and brawling. Vince is there. All the referees you mentioned are there. Vince is there. Slaughter's there. Patterson's there. Jerry Briscoe's there. I mean, it is a sea of people that are around there. And thankfully, and they were nice. The referees were actually protecting us because they knew we were there. It was chaotic. And that was right. Wow. That was right after Bret backdrop Shawn back into the ringside area, and they're climbing over. You can't see Jan in that picture. You can see me. Jan is actually on the floor. She's crawling around, and she was scared to death because she nearly got kicked in the face twice.
Wow. So I see Corderis there. Is that Kyoto right behind Bret Hart?
Yeah.
I think that's Kyoto. That's a young kid. So all four of those guys, four of my best friends.
Jack, we were in Indianapolis at a show a few years ago, and Jack Dunn was there, and Jack actually signed the photo for us.
No kidding. So everybody that's watching right now, Jack Doan is a blonde referee on the left, right in front of Chris there on the left. A lot of these guys have been there for, at this point, many, many, many years. Jimmy Corderis is from Canada. What was the atmosphere like outside of them wanting Shawn Michaels' head on a stick? Did everybody know that Bret was leaving? Take me kind of through the whole scenario of that day and that weekend.
We fly into Montreal Saturday morning, and when we fly in, we're staying at this hotel, and there's a shopping mall right across the street. We go across the street just to get lunch. It's like 12 or 1 o'clock on Saturday. The first people we see as we go into the mall are Kevin Kelly and your buddy, Vince Russo. And And Kevin goes, "Hey guys, how's it going?" And I go, "Hey guys, how's it going? How's everything going this weekend?" And I had heard briefly that maybe Bret was leaving, but nobody knew for sure, really. So as soon as I said, "Hey, how's everybody doing?" Vince blurts out as loud as he can yell, "Hey, we're just praying to God that Bret or Sean don't kill each other this weekend."
No kidding.
Yeah, no kidding. I go, "So it is true." And they go, "Yeah, we're scared to death and everything, blah, blah, blah." So we went to lunch. We came back to our hotel. It's probably 5 or 6 o'clock Saturday. We go in the bar just to kind of unwind. And we're in the bar like 5 minutes. And in walk Vince, Jim Ross, Jim Cornette, Vince Russo, Patterson, Slaughter, and I think Jerry Briscoe. And weird look on her face. And so Jan and I were playing pool, and Vince kind of comes over because Vince knew we were at this point. And I go, "Hi, Mr. Vince, how are you? Hey guys, how's it going?" Et cetera, et cetera. I said, "You look kind of stressed out." He said, "Oh, it's just been a long day. You know how the shows, go trying to prepare and everything." Well, if you remember the timeline, we saw them and they were in the bar probably minutes after they had their big meeting with Sean, where they decided we're going to have to double cross Bret. That's how only way we're going to get out of this. It had to be, I swear to this day, it had to be right after that meeting where they all got together and did what they did. And we could talk for 2 hours on our timeline because I remember everything so quickly. The last thing I'll say is it was after the event and after the show, and we were going back to the hotel. We were with Vladimir and Charlie and long hair Lenny, the New York, New Jersey, crew of super fans that everybody knows. And so we're sitting in the bar, and I see Owen and Rick Rude coming, and so there was already rumblings that something weird happened with just something. So I run out of the bar and I go to Owen. I go, "Owen, what's going on? What's going on?" And pardon my language, he was fucking Vince double crossed me, screwed him right in the middle of the goddamn ring. Fucking Vince, they double crossed him. And I go, "Jesus." So it is true. He's like, "I can't even stand it." And Rick Rude looked like he wanted to bite the head off of a chicken. He was so mad, and they were so mad. And it's like, oh my God, what just happened here? And here it is, going on, 25, 30 years later, and it's still talked about. And I remember every detail of that weekend in Montreal, every detail.
There are very few incidents in sports that can be labeled by a few words that will live on forever, ever and ever. Now, you mentioned Owen Hart. Over the years, the late great Owen Hart, who passed away in 1999 in Kansas City. I want to throw this next picture up because this is a really cool one. Tuxedos. How did this picture happen? And very quickly, or because I know you could talk an hour on it, your friendship with Owen kick off and continued.
That was at the 1996 Slammies in Anaheim. We had a mutual friend that owned a tuxedos shop, and he knew Owen. And so he had Owen's measurements, and he had us fly out to California with Owen's tuxedo. We knew Bill Apter in those days, the great photographer and journalist from Pro Wrestling Illustrated. It was Bill that actually hooked up Owen and us together because Owen always was appreciative and had fans, like I said, pick him up at the airport and do these things. What we did was that after the Slammies took place that night, Bill wanted to do a gag photo shoot where he had Owen in his tux and I had a tape measure and Owen had a Slammy. And so Bill was taking pictures of me doing that pose with Owen, where Owen was all acting mad, pissed off, like he had a poor fitting tuxedo. In the meantime, all these fans were circulating around and didn't know what was going on. Jan actually took that picture, but Jan was standing next to Bill because Bill actually used these photos for for his magazine. But yes, I mean, that was so funny where Owen had that sneer on his face and I'm trying to measure him and everything. But that was so funny because the fans had no idea what was going on. And meanwhile, Jan and Bill are like laughing behind the camera, taking his pictures and everything. That was so, when you talked about it, I thought, oh, please, I hope they put that photo up of Owen and I from the Slammies in 96.
100%. And Bill Apter, by the way, still works for Sportskeeda all these years later. I want to stay on Owen Hart just for one more question because we hear so many times from a wrestler's perspective what he was like. From a fan's perspective and somebody that knew him in a different way of getting introduced to him. What was he like with you?
He was so nice, so friendly, so caring. I mean, every time that we would pick him up at an airport in Ohio or Pennsylvania or Kentucky and take him to a show, he was always appreciative of it. Every time that WWE was in Columbus, he would spend the night at our house. And so when we would get to the house after the show, first thing he would do was he would call Martha. He would call Martha and they would talk and everything and say he was okay and everything. And usually the next morning when we were going to like the TV taping for SmackDown or something like that, we'd always go with Owen. Owen would work out. We get a little quick bite to eat and everything, and then we go to the show. And probably 3 or 4 times in that time frame, Owen would rib, not Jan. Owen would always rib me. If he loved you, he ribbed you, and he would rib me so many times. I mean, we would go to restaurants, and I'd be in the bathroom, and Owen would pay the bill, and he would tell the person at the front desk at the cash register, "Oh, that's Stone Cold Steve Austin's brother. He's coming out here in a minute." Or we would be in a car, and Owen loved country music, and so he always had a country music station, but I would be driving, and I'd come to a stoplight, and then I'd put my foot in the gas, and there'd be nothing. And this would happen like 3 or 4 times on a car trip. Well, when I was looking, to avoid traffic, Owen would slide his hand underneath, and he'd slide my gear shift into neutral. So we'll do that. Or he would tell things. One time, we went to a show and Owen wasn't feeling good, and we got there late. And when we got there late, I told Owen, "Why don't we just tell him the truth and say you got stuck at the gym or something?" "No, we'll tell him something else." And then he would, when in front of everybody, he'd tell Pat Patterson, "Oh, Chris made us late because he locked his keys in the car." And everything else like that. I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, he was such a good dude. I mean, I still have the phone number, his phone number at his old house, because if you remember the week that he died, him and Martha were moving into a beautiful new house on a lake, Calgary. Well, I had his phone number on a Rolodex at work, and so I still to this day have that card from my Rolodex that has his old phone number in it. I miss the guy so much.
Yeah, I know you get emotional when you talk about him and
Imagine how much fun the wrestling business would have been had he lived 10 more years. Could you imagine Owen having the chance to work with Kurt Angle or Eddie Guerrero or Santino Marella? Can you imagine how funny those skits and those things would have been with those guys with Owen? It would have been priceless.
And it's the one thing that right now in wrestling is missing is the comedy, is the fun, is the guys having fun or ladies having fun. Every time I hear his name, Chris, I always stop a little bit because everybody has different ways that Hart's name means to them. Clearly, he was a good friend. You get emotional talking about it. For me, I don't know if my WWE career would have even happened if not for what happened tragically in Kansas City that night. I was the only reporter or working media member in the arena when it happened, and because of that, I did a bunch of interviews, a bunch of shows, and then ended up meeting the WWE 3 or 4 months down the road. So I always think about that, and sometimes it's like a teeter-totter. Something bad happens and something good happens to somebody else. So I don't even know how I feel about it because I have 2 kids that I wouldn't have without my WWE career. So you look at it from one way, I look at it from another way, but we always meet in the middle with the good memories, don't we?
Yep. Oh yeah. I mean, I remember we were doing there was an autograph signing for a 1998 show in Cincinnati, and it was not too long after Brian Pillman had died. And so they were doing an autograph session with all the proceeds of these autographed items going to the Pillman family. And I was sitting behind Owen, and Owen was sitting next to Vader. And so what Owen would do as a rib was that he would, as items were being slid in front of them, Owen would lean over and he would sign Big Van Vader's name on the poster somewhere where I couldn't see it, or he'd like write on his arm or something. I mean, all these little tiny things that Owen would do to lighten the mood and to make people laugh. And he was just a joy to be around. He really was. I mean, I remember we had a couple of car rides with him after Montreal, and I mean, we had some very frank, emotional discussions about what happened with Bret, why did Vince do what he did, how responsible was Shawn, how responsible was Hunter, all this other stuff. I mean, I mean, I saw the good and I saw the bad. And it wasn't bad with Owen, but it was those were the only times that Owen wasn't just a jovial, funny dude. But we saw every range of emotion, and he was like, I mean, he was like a brother. I worked indies in those days as a heel manager, so I would throw some ideas off of him, and he'd throw some ideas back at me. So even the few years that I was actually in the business as a performer, I mean, I had Owen on my shoulder as my guardian angel. I mean, he was just he. I can't say it enough. He was just such a good dude.
That's very, very cool. Appreciate you sharing those stories very, very much. Let's throw up the next picture here. This is a super cool one. The Undertaker, and the angle that it is super, super, super cool. So on the top of the cell, and my boy Big Tommy C was ringside as the stage manager. You were there. What do you remember about this iconic picture?
Okay, about actually, of course, that's the beginning of the match. And so, if you watch TV broadcast of it, when Taker throws Mick off the cell, the camera pans back really quickly to that shot. You can see me leaning around the corner looking, and like an idiot, I had no idea what to do at that moment. So I clapped and I watched that video and I thought, I am such an idiot. I guy's head laying there on the table, and here I am clapping for him. I mean, that was just such a. People ask me, what's the greatest match I've ever seen? And I have a couple of different things. I said, but that is the most incredible example of bravery I've ever seen on that match, because I remember how the crowd reacted. There's a picture on my Facebook page that Jan took where she's shooting up at the cage, the roof, when Mick and Taker are walking, when they almost step through the cage. And when that happens, we're like freaking out and they're walking. And I'm thinking, oh my, and I knew that Taker was coming into the match with a bad ankle. Mick had a bunch of injuries coming into the match. They were both going to be taking time off. And I thought, how are they going to end this thing? How are they going to get out of this match? So when Mick gets thrown off the top and he goes through and we're waiting there and time standing still, I turn to Jan and I go, well, I guess I know how they're going to get out of this match. It's over. When they started lifting the cage, I thought this thing's over. And then, Mick comes back and goes up a second time and he gets choke slammed through the cage and time stands still. And Jan is literally ready to go into the ring because she's scared to death that Mick's dead. I mean, that was such a surreal experience watching that. And then I'll tell you something else. And this is the funny part of it. And there's no way to verify this or authenticate it, but it's true. After the match, when they lifted the cage up and they were cleaning the ring out, they were sweeping the thumbtacks out of the ring. Howard Finkel comes by and he scoops up a big handful of thumbtacks and hands it to me. So I put it in my fanny pack and I don't know what to do with them. So when we got back home, I put them in a baggie and I took a piece of tape and I put the tape on the baggie saying, match used thumbtacks, Hell in a Cell, Taker versus Mankind, handed to us by Howard Finkel after the match. And there's a photo on my Facebook page of the actual baggie that has the tape on it, because there's no way to verify it. Unfortunately, Finkel's not with us anymore. I mean, you can certainly buy thumbtacks at any damn Staples store or anything, but those are real match used thumbtacks from Hell in a Cell in June of 1998 or in Pittsburgh.
That is unbelievable. Howard Finkel is for people who don't know, he was employee number 3. When you look at a paycheck from WWE, Vince and Linda were 1 and 2. Howard Finkel was number 3. He also, I don't know if you know this, he was the assistant manager of our WWE softball team. We take it very seriously, Chris. Yes, very serious. That's a great. So do you still have that bag of thumbtacks? Do you still have it?
Sure do. It's in the top drawer of our dresser in my master bedroom.
Oh, we're going to be throwing a picture up of that during this interview, so I need you to send that to me. That's incredible. So we're talking 27 years now. You've had a bag of thumbtacks. When you've looked at it over the years, because memories are, for me, memories are a powerful thing. A powerful thing, especially when you start to get a little bit older, in the middle age, and then later in life. When you look at that bag of thumbtacks, what do you think about?
I think about the talent and the sacrifice and the skill of the performers that put that on. I mean, for Mick, because that was, if I remember right, that was the first time thumbtacks had ever been used in a WWE match ever. because Vince just wasn't a fan of that style or anything, but he let Mick and Taker do what they wanted to do. I just think when they put that match together, that was the second Hell in a Cell match. The first one was at Bad Blood a few months earlier, where Shawn kind of came off the side of the cage, and I thought, I'll bet you Taker and Mick go to the top. Somehow they're going to go to the top. Well, Jesus Christ, who thought they were going to go to the very top in the first box? At the beginning. And then Mick comes, he doesn't fall off, he gets thrown off, 2 minutes later. I just think of, the skill that Undertaker had to use to toss Mick in a safe way. Mick had to turn his shoulders and roll so that he'd land safely. I mean, thank God that table exploded on impact, which absorbed the energy, even though Mick still broke his collarbone and screwed his shoulder up. I mean, and then nobody else really got hurt on the floor because Big Tommy C didn't get hurt. I think Bob Clark was on the floor. He didn't get hurt. Hugo Savinovich and Carlos Cabrera, the Spanish announcers, they got laid out too, and they didn't get hurt or anything. It was just amazing, that happened. And then, of course, I forget the masseuse was coming around ringside and checking, and Vince was there, and Slaughter was there. I mean, I remember the story about Vince told Mick afterwards, Mick, I want to thank you for everything you've done for this business, but by God, please never do that again. I mean, it was just the fact that those people were willing to make that sacrifice and share their skills, even if the skill is falling off of a cage safely from 20 feet up in the air. I mean, like I say, it's the greatest example of bravery I've ever seen. Just seeing that, because Mick was knocked out cold from the second fall, and he still had the wherewithal to pull the thumbtacks out and to finish the match and everything else like that. So, I mean, stories have been told about that match for, again, if you're 25, 30 years or whatever, it goes down in infamy as well as one of the most memorable WWE moments. It's certainly ours as a fan, because, I mean, you can see me peeking around the corner. I mean, we were just on the second fall and really thought that Mick was seriously hurt.
I was trying to point to you for yeah, go ahead.
Because that ring, that was the old ring that they used when Yokozuna was champion. And so that ring was really reinforced hard. So that was an ungodly hard ring that they were using for that match. And so when Mick fell, hell, he might as well have been falling in the parking lot. It was so hard.
That's what I was getting ready to say. So Yokozuna, for you younger fans, because right now Chris is taking you down memory lane. I got to tell you, you are taking me to so many great places in my mind right now. All the names, the Bob Clarks, a lot of the names that regular fans wouldn't know. But if you're a fan over the years, you would know these guys because their names got said on TV a lot of the time. So in this picture, for people who have not noticed, Chris is at the bottom middle in the pink shirt, peering around the edge. And if you've never seen a Hell in a Cell in person, it's like going on a high dive for the first time. It's a lot higher when you get up there than it looks like when you're just watching on television. So for these guys, and then the choke slam, which broke the top of the cage, I would argue that that slam would hurt a lot more than going through the announce table from, you're adding 4 or you're taking 4 feet away. But that ring was so hard in the impact. And didn't he lose a couple of teeth or went through his nose or something like that during that match?
I mean, he landed in the middle. He landed in the middle of the ring, which is the softest part of the ring. And that thing was still hard. If you remember the story, Mick had taken the chair up there with him to, for the fight. And so when Taker choke slammed him through the roof and he came down, the chair followed him down. And I mean, it was a regular, steel chair that you'd buy at Menards or Target or whatever. So when he landed, that chair hit him in the mouth, and that's what knocked his teeth out. And I think one was still in the ring, but the one that was famous, it somehow went through his nasal cavity and ended up hanging out of his nose. Yeah, I mean, that chair came down with him and hit him square in the mouth.
I'll be honest with you. When you started telling me the story about Howard Finkel scooping up the thumbtacks, I thought you were going to say he scooped up a couple of teeth and gave those to you. I was like, that would be next level if you still had those. All right, quickly, because we're running out of time for this episode. This has been amazing, and I cannot wait to have you on again. 2 more pictures I want to get to. You at FanFest, one of the things I loved to do the most was when they would set up a booth and we could call matches with fans. And here you are with, say what you want about good old JR. Michael Cole has established himself as the voice of the WWE, 28 years, and I believe he's only missed less than 5 shows in 28 years, which is obnoxious when you're talking about 52 weeks a year. What do you remember about sitting here and calling some matches with Michael Cole?
Oh, that was a blast. I mean, I wasn't doing much of the talking because I was, running the equipment and everything and sitting next to Michael. But Michael was so great to work with. I mean, the fans were so great. That was in 2002, which was in Toronto at the old convention center, because that was the first time that you and I spoke, because you were part of that session and you were sitting there, and you and Michael and Taz was part of that, and Kevin Kelly was part of that. And I mean, it was so much fun, just sitting next to you guys, listen to you, spew your craft and your skills, and do that and give the fans, the time of their life, because, you guys do it. And I've been lucky enough to do it for so many years. For those fans, it was their 3 minutes or 5 minutes, that they were never going to get back. But it was 5 minutes that they were going to take with them the rest of their lives, saying, hey, I got to sit with Michael Cole and call a match, or I got to sit with Coach and call, Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan from WrestleMania 5, or do that. I remember how gracious you and Taz and Michael were and everything, but I remember the gratitude and the energy of the fans, because we were gratified. During one of the during one of the breaks, Vince and Linda McMahon came walking by, and they were just looking at the exhibits, and they came up to Jan and I while we were at lunch, and they said, we heard that the fantasy play-by-play was, the most popular session here, that, the staff, meaning you guys, you were so, gracious and helpful and mannerly and friendly. And the sessions were, I mean, we had like lines of people all week. And people were coming through 2 and 3 times, and they felt like they had such a good time. They felt like they were living out a dream, but that we didn't Hollywood them, or that we did treat them with utmost respect. And they just 3 or 5 minutes that they had with you guys was just great. And that's why, again, I am so grateful to have met and actually worked with you and Michael and all those people. And I had a blast. There's another photo that you can't see that has Les Thatcher and Maven. Maven had won Tough Enough that year. And so what we did is we hooked up a match that had Maven versus Chris Jericho from Raw for the world title. And it was Maven actually living out his dream, calling his own match, for the world title on Raw, with Les Thatcher, his trainer from Cincinnati, and me sitting next to him because we knew him really well at the time. He literally thought that was the dream of his life. Even more than wrestling shows and stuff, was being able to sit at the table and do fun stuff like that. Yep, that's the photo.
There it is right there. A lot of people think that Maven looked like a young me with minus the and I said, if I even look anything like Maven at any point in my life, I'll take it. I will take it. Him and I are still friends to this day. To this day. One of my favorite people. By the way, a couple of stories from my side of it. I loved it. I loved doing that. Michael Cole at his core is a miserable human being. You know how that you'll meet people that they're happy when they're complaining, or they're happy when they're miserable, or they act like they're miserable? That's who Michael was. I traveled with him for 3 years at the beginning, from 99 to 02 till about right here. What I remember about this was the Rock Hogan WrestleMania. That was they had worked for the whole week, and then the crowd turned on him. Were you surprised that the crowd turned on Rock and Hogan at that WrestleMania?
We knew that the day before, because we had been hearing rumblings, because they did the autograph sessions on the level above us, and we could hear the fans, cheering for Hogan and chanting for Hogan. And so I ran up there during a break, and the security guards wouldn't even let me get close, because the fans were so, into it. So the next day during the show, I remember talking to Jan, and we thought, the way these fans are, they don't want to boo Babe Ruth. They see Hogan as Babe Ruth, and no one's going to boo him. I said, if from a physicality standpoint, if Hogan could meet Rock halfway, they were going to tell a hell of a story. And I mean, that is probably my most favorite match, because we're off to the side a little bit. We were right where the aisleway meets the ringside area, so you couldn't always see us. But when they had that exchange in the middle of the match, where Hogan kicked out of the rock bottom, and then he hulked up, and the fans across from the hard cameras were going crazy. And Jan even tells me, "What are they doing? I can't believe this." I mean, that building, I don't care. I mean, TV does it great, but you can't imagine how that felt in the building when 67,000 people really thought and were hoping that Hogan was going to beat Rock. So when Hogan drops the leg and Rock kicks out, the place explodes because now the thing is, the camera does a quick shot over to where we are, and I jumped up. So I'm standing and clapping, knowing, okay, they kicked out of each other's finishers. Now it's full speed ahead, baby. We're really going to make an epic out of this. So, I mean, yeah, you could see me standing, and we're just going nuts. It was magic in that building. It was magic.
I think there's less than 5 times in my career, Chris, where I walk down onto the floor to watch something. Because when you do that, the fans, you never want to take away from, the fans see you, they yell at you instead of at. But I said, I don't care. I'm going to go walk out because I want to feel the energy and everything you're describing. I literally have goosebumps on my arm right now sitting here because you're taking my mind back. And that night was, and I want people to go back on YouTube and watch this match. And you'll see about 10 minutes where they just stand and jawing back and forth. And I say all the time, Chris, that in pro wrestling, if you have a magical moment or a magical match, you don't need all the high-flying bullshit. And Rock and Hogan were such massive entities that Rock in the moment knew, hey, the way we have this match put together, this isn't going to fly. We've got to completely switch it. And that's what they were doing. And to me, that is as high level as you can get in this business when you understand what a heel is, what a babyface is. Could you feel it there at ringside, the shift in how the match was going to go?
And that's also the night of your "What Up, Jay" promo.
Yes.
Here's the thing. A quick story about that. We were sitting right next to Danny Garcia, who at the time was Rock's wife. And so we would see each other at shows, and she would say, oh, well, Rock loves you guys, you and Owen, or I'd done autograph signings with Rock and everything. So we were joking and talking and everything. So when that promo aired, we were turned around looking at the board, watching it. And as Rock would lay these lines on you, and you would lay lines back to Rock, we would turn, and Danny was cracking up and we were cracking up. So it was such a shared moment with you and Rock doing that. What up, Jake? And it was just that's a moment that I treasure with you, because knowing Al and everything, but knowing Danny, there's a photo that we have, of us with Michael Clark Duncan from the same time where Danny's actually photo bombing the photo in the background. I mean, Danny was so cool. It's great to see what her and Dwayne have done with the UFL and everything. And it's just, that's such a shared moment, because when you go, what up, G? And we're just cracking up, and Danny's cracking up laughing as live as that's going on the big board.
I never knew that story till just now. I never knew that. That's amazing. Thank you for telling me that. That really, really is. Here's what I want to do, because we've got to end this right now, but I'm assuming that you have thousands of pictures over the years from your different times. What I would love to do, if you're willing to do it, is bring you back on every few months, and let's just go through, because we spent 20 minutes just talking about 4 pictures. And I can only imagine you've got a ton more that you have the stories of. Am I correct?
Yes.
Would you be willing to do that so we could do a few more episodes and go through a lot of the pictures you have? Because I think fans would really like to hear the story from a fan's perspective, but also see some of the memorable moments maybe they don't even know happened through your lens. Would that be cool with you?
Anything you want, brother. Anything you want. If that's what you want, I'm more than honored to do it for you, John.
All right. Well, we're going to put a pin in it right here. This has been an amazing hour. Hopefully everybody at home enjoyed it. Chris, this was amazing for me. We're going to do it again very, very soon. Tell Jan that I said hello. Hopefully she can be on the next time that we do this. I know she's got to work, but thank you. And thank you for the memories. Thank you for taking us through all of that. This was amazing. It's amazing for me, as hopefully it was for you. It's absolutely amazing. Guys, like, share, subscribe. This is what BTT is all about. The last hour, it's everything for us. So for Chris, for Producer Man, I am the coach. We'll see you next time.